I'm Don Gossen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nevermind. We are hyper-focused on tracking and tracing data assets and models and workflows through analytical pipelines so that we can establish provenance, and from that extrapolate or extend that out to fine-grained attribution for the contributions that are made to the analytical solution. My background, I'm Canadian, but at this point I'm actually Canadian in name only because I've lived outside of Canada for longer than I've lived in it. I spent the better part of a decade and a half as a subject matter expert in data and analytics, working in IT consulting, traveling the world, building data estates for some of the world's biggest companies, HSBC, AXA, L'Oreal, etc. And then got into crypto in earnest in 2016, started a project called Ocean Protocol in 2017, then started another company called Kiko, from which we incubated Nevermind. The long story is, in my prior career in data and analytics, I was always trying to answer four very basic questions. Where's the data coming from? Where is it going? Who's using it? What are they using it for? And a bit surprisingly, those four questions lead to really complex answers and corresponding solutions, at least within a contemporary context. So Web 2 solutions do a really poor job of answering those questions. So I was always on the lookout for an alternative, something that was more fit for purpose. And then in 2016, my future co-founder, Dimmy, was speaking at a financial services conference in London that I was attending, and he regaled us with the benefits of using a blockchain for provenance integrity, specifically as it relates to data, and that's when the light went on for me. So from that point on, I jumped down the Web3 rabbit hole in earnest, still trying to answer those four questions, but in a more elegant fashion, using blockchain as a tool to establish provenance integrity, and from that, fine-grained attribution. And it's from that fine-grained attribution that we can then enforce different control mechanisms, payment schemes, et cetera, as it relates to the usage of data, associated analytical models, and how those come together in analytic workflows to create solutions and inferences, et cetera. AI currently has a bit of an issue with black box effect, biases, hallucinations. There's a lot of questions around where's this data coming from? How's it being sourced? How's it being leveraged within these models? We are hyper-focused on addressing those concerns. So, and doing that in a way that is open, transparent, and follows the Web3 ethos of democratization and egalitarianism, et cetera. I'm a very open source proponent, or a big open source proponent. I don't believe in copyright and IP protection, especially when you relate it to things like analytics, data, and in particular the models. So I feel like there is this confluence of technologies that we can bring together to really leverage each one's corresponding proverbial superpowers. And by bringing them together, we can really, expand upon the capabilities that each solution brings to the table. Blockchain really helps to clarify and bring transparency to systems of the transactional systems. Analytics are, by their very nature, transactional in their functionality. AI fits within that architectural pattern. So leveraging, this quite elegant solution on the back end to empower AIs to be much more transparent and ultimately more usable. These two, I think they're just going to become more and more close-knit. One of the things we say internally, AIs won't have bank accounts, right? We're clearly biased, but the question becomes, okay, they're going to need the means to transact. How do they do that? With wallets on chain. It's a pretty clear answer for us, at least. And we see this on the horizon coming to fruition. The other thing we're looking at right now is in terms of data accessibility and control. We've seen recently a movement of organizations towards locking down their APIs, right? Reddit, Twitter, Stack Overflow. They're concerned about effectively the 4 questions that I'm always trying to answer and what those AIs are doing with the information, right? Or the data sets, the payloads. And so the response has been like a very visceral, knee-jerk reaction by these organizations to just shut everything off. Will these organizations be able to compete with companies, organizations, open source movements that are focused, strictly on the development of AIs and LLMs, et cetera? Probably not. Like, history demonstrates that that's not the case. You leverage best of breed that others are developing and merge that into your own ecosystem. So I think that's what's going to take place. These assets that are now being locked down, their APIs that are being closed off, they'll likely become open again in the future, but they'll become open under certain constraints, right? Maybe it's pay-to-play mechanisms. You've got to pay in order to gain access to these data sets. Maybe it's a more, long-tail, value-added monetization scheme where royalties or residuals are passed back to the entities that are opening up their APIs. Regardless of what those mechanisms are, I think there is a place for Web3 and in particular smart contracts, et cetera, to play a role in helping to ensure the integrity of these solutions. So to answer your question, I think we're just going to see tighter coupling of these solutions or these capabilities and tools as we move forward. I mean, obviously LLMs have really been an eye-opener for most people, diffusion models as well. I think they've really captured people's imaginations from a general population point of view. I think they've also sort of drawn back the curtain on how machine learning and AI actually works. And people are now coming to the realization that there needs to be some form of, I think, or at least there needs to be an enablement of control. There also needs to be, I think, arguably a manifestation of consent, right? And so what we're seeing now is, especially from the Web3 side, the development and invocation of these solutions that have been trying to capture, control token gating solutions, et cetera, as well as like at a higher level, the consent mechanisms that are now starting to be embedded into these solutions. So I think those two pieces are really powerful in terms of how we as people are going to interact with these new systems and services that are made available because of these AIs, but also how these AIs are integrating with one another, right? And consenting to usage amongst themselves, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm excited about what's emerging. I mean, we're literally just we're in the basement. We're not even on the ground floor yet. There's a lot that's being developed every day, especially on the AI side. It seems like the landscape shifts every week. So yeah, I'm just overall excited to see what technologies are coming out. I think the hackathon's been great. I mean, me, JB, and Jonathan were talking about this on a Telegram thread like a little over a month and a half ago, maybe. It's kind of just, a lark. JB asked, like, would anybody be interested in a hackathon? Jonathan mentioned we should maybe try and do something in Europe for EthCC that was coming up, and I suggested we should totally do that as a side event. The fact that we were able to bring together so many organizations to co-organize this, I think speaks, kind of to the Web3 ethos of collaboration. It was truly a collaborative effort. We wouldn't have gotten here if like one entity had been responsible for everything. We're not event organizers, so I think it's been, to pull this off, to bring, close to 100 AI devs from all over the world together to hack for 36 hours straight, especially without having any sort of like event organization background for any of the co-organizers. I think it's been an amazing event, and I'm looking forward to hopefully continuing to run these Augment events in the future and really help drive, this confluence or intersection point of these two technologies. Yeah, and just excited to see where this ship is going to sail to.